Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. In today's episode, we will be discussing the sixth episode of the first season of House of the Dragon, The Princess and the Queen. Sorry about the late production on this episode. We were away for the weekend and just been kind of chaotic recently, but we will plan to have another episode later this week, hopefully to be discussing The Patient, obviously, which we've been covering week to week, and hopefully we have a good episode. It's already available right now, have not yet seen it, so I can't speak to whether it continues to be good. Last week it was pretty strong, actually. And also, I think we will probably be discussing the new Dahmer docudrama on Netflix. And Celia, we had discussed, you texted me earlier in the week, you had started watching this also, which is part of the reason I gave it a shot. I was reluctant to jump into this, but I did end up watching the whole entire thing.
Me too.
And by the way, so we should discuss it at some point in the future, but I did want to let you know that the ratings have come in just for the first 3 days, that it was available 4 days last week. And you were asking me, who's this show even for? As if this would have like a niche audience. Just so you know, based on its current trajectory, it will be the third most popular thing ever on Netflix, behind only the current season of Stranger Things and Squid Game. So it would be bigger than Bridgerton, bigger than all, like 50% bigger than the last season, most recent season of The Umbrella Academy or Ozark. Or, for example, Cobra Kai, like twice as big as Cobra Kai. So a phenomenal success for a show that I have many things to say about. Some of them are positive, many of them are negative. But, you know, I would binge the whole thing. So it's extremely bingeable, unfortunately, for whatever that says about our culture or what it says about me personally. But we can speak about that later. Stay tuned. Later in the week, I will be having a conversation with Sona, who's seen a couple of episodes. And Celia, I think we should talk about it as well. And maybe we'll just put that all together in one episode later this week.
I have so much to say.
Yes, so do I.
About that series, which I also binged.
And of course, subscribe so you know when those episodes become available. Drop us an email with your feedback to needsomeintroduction@gmail.com. And I think that's all of our housekeeping.
It is rumor. Only. Spun by the princess's rivals.
People have eyes, boy. Yet his grace the king, it seems, will not accept what his eyes see. This flimsy shield alone stands between you and the headsman. The willful blindness of a father towards his child.
I wish my father affected a similar blindness.
Have I not, these many years? And yet today, you publicly assaulted a knight of the king's heart in the defense of your...
You have your honor. And I have mine.
All right, so this episode, The Princess and the Queen, directed by Miguel Sapochnik, who is one of the producers of this House of the Dragon show, and also one of the most important directors of the original Game of Thrones show. Directed some of those really large-scale classic episodes from that series. This show, unlike some of his other ones, is not really an action spectacle type of episode. But he himself, in this featurette that's included in the show, talks about how this is basically another pilot for the show, like kind of a reboot for the show, which I agree with. And it is interesting also, if you saw that featurette, to see that this is going to now be more of a slow cadence to the show. Kind of this will become like a week to week, maybe months will pass, but not these giant jumps in time, which is good to hear. But, you know, I've said a lot of positive things about this show, but I feel like they may have jumped a little too far ahead, is my opinion. But let's break down the episode, and then you can tell me on some of these different plot points, Celia, what you think, if maybe they moved a little too fast in some of these ways.
They did.
So we open with now Emma Darcy. Interestingly, this actress, Emma Darcy, now playing Rhaenyra. And of course, her mother, the character who died early in this series, the character's name was Emma. So it's kind of a strange irony there. And for a second, I thought we were watching a flashback. She so much looks like that other actress that I actually thought we might be seeing a flashback to that earlier difficult pregnancy. And I mean, the sound design here is very similar to maybe, like I'd say, the final version of Brundlefly in the David Cronenberg movie, The Fly. And it's like a very, very disgusting sound design for this.
What a great scene, though. It goes on
very difficult.
Forever.
Forever, yes.
That scene follows them through the entire birthing all the way
through
to the door of the queen.
Yeah, so let's break that down. Exactly that. We hear this very painful, disturbing birth. And once again, maybe the overriding theme of this entire show for this entire season is childbirth sucks. And once again, we see it twice in this episode alone. But she gives birth to another child, another boy. Apparently this is one of many boys that she's given birth to, a third now, son, in this 10-year window that we've jumped ahead. And like you mentioned, we now see that she immediately must present the child to the queen. And she is so, Rhaenyra being so hard-headed, as she tends to be here on the show, she's like, not only will I let my nursemaid go deliver the baby for the queen's perusal, she's going to do it herself. And she literally has just passed the afterbirth. It's pretty grisly, the sequence.
I thought she might be doing it because she's protecting the newborn, wondering why she even, in this very moment, has to present it to the queen, her third son.
That's interesting that you said that, because in the moment I thought, oh my God, does she think her son might be in danger? Then, of course, when you show up at the king's quarters, the king is like a doting grandfather, and the queen is making every presentation of being civil. So now it really reverses itself. It makes you feel like this is just Rhaenyra making a point of saying enough is enough in a way. So she's kind of being obstinate about it, especially when you realize, of course, that what Olivia Cooke, now speaking of new casting, playing Alicent, is trying to prove a point here, right? Which is, of course, clearly that she sees right away that dark hair, and she knows that this is not Laena's child.
Yes.
She even says, keep trying.
Do keep trying, Selena. Sooner or later, you may get one who looks like you.
You don't think to consult me before you name my child?
He's our child, is he not?
Only one of us is bleeding.
I deserve some say in the affairs of my own family.
You don't seem so interested in our affairs, right?
Everyone knows what's going on.
Exactly.
So
right.
They can't accuse her of it for fear of death, but they know who the father of these children are. I believe it's the same father for all of them.
Harwin, yes, I believe it's Harwin.
Yeah, I don't think she's just partying her life away because she's not going to get anything from her husband down there. So she's just having kids, which would be also fine. I mean, that's kind of a fun thing to do. It seems like she has somehow fathered all these children with one man that she must have feelings for.
Yes, I think so. So a few interesting points to that. One is, speaking of jumping a little bit too far ahead, I don't think that they could have anticipated this, but the reaction on the internet last week when Harwin rescued her at the end of the wedding gone wrong, everybody on the internet basically had palpitations, being like, oh my God, Harwin and Rhaenyra, which of course they get exactly what they wanted. But we just fast forwarded through the entire relationship, and not to jump too far to the end, but that's the end of the relationship too.
Yeah, I think there should have been these actresses just dressed younger.
Yeah.
So there could be a, 5-year gap somewhere in the middle of these two, and then continue with the same actresses. Who cares? That'd be great.
And speaking of these uncomfortable ellipses that we've seen, there's a bunch of them here that I'm going to call out specifically. One is the Harwin relationship, which should have been very interesting, especially once again, they couldn't have possibly anticipated the reaction that was going to be. But obviously, everybody was so excited last week, according to the internet reaction, to see her and Harwin together, and they do not get to see that. You get to see the end. You get to see the end result, but you don't get to see the actual thing, right?
And I think he should have a bigger part. He's the father of all the heirs. Why can't he have a bigger part?
Yep.
And that other guy really has turned into a big, you-know-what, man.
Yeah,
I didn't see that coming.
The second giant ellipsis here that they kind of skipped too far ahead, I think, is Kristen Cole, who orchestrates, in a way, this whole embarrassment of Harwin.
This is what you teach, Cole. Cruelty to the weaker opponent.
Your interest in the Princeling's training is quite unusual, Commander. Most men would only have that kind of devotion toward a cousin, or a brother, or a son.
Say it again! Say it again!
Lord as much.
Basically calling him out as the father of the kids in public, which of course lets Harwin attack him. And then this is so disgraceful that it gets him kicked out of King's Landing. However, Kristen Cole, who murdered someone during the wedding, is still there because now he's part of the Queen's Guard. but still seems a little convenient that he wasn't disgraced by this whole thing. And now that he's been very close with the queen, which once again, this is something they've kind of just elided past, but I'd love to have seen that in between, because wouldn't people have many questions about him still hanging around the castle after this disgraceful thing he did in public? So I do find it interesting that we just skipped all that. We just skipped it.
I definitely agree with you. And then Damon is all of a sudden extremely virile, and he has many offspring at this point.
Yes, the third
we
thing.
should have seen
Yes.
that relationship too.
Exactly. So now we have a third thing that they think they have skipped way too far ahead. We suddenly see that Damon is no longer sterile, or not sterile, but I guess impotent. He's had now 3 children, or, impregnated his wife 3 times. They seem to have a loving relationship. I would love to have seen him in this mode. Like, what was it about her? Maybe it's just his love for like the old Valerian myths and him thinking about he's creating some new Valerian kingdom. But if that's the case, once again, a fascinating thing. He has basically been a free rider for 10 years. He is not attached to any land. He basically goes in as a mercenary to like burn people's enemies and sticks around as long as he feels like it. And then like a biker gang or something, they jump on their dragons and head over to the next town.
You are considering Prince Reggio's offer.
We have a good life here. We're free to do as we please. Welcomed and feted.
And eternally guests.
Precisely. We are without responsibility. The political scheming, the endless shifting of loyalties and succession is none of ours.
They are using us.
It's refreshing, isn't it? A simple transaction. We have dragons, they have gold.
We are more than this, Damon. We are not minstrels or mummers who play at the pleasure of an alien prince. We are the blood of old Valeria. We don't belong here.
Valeria is gone. We don't belong anywhere.
I want my child to be born where I was born, on Driftmark, in my Lord Father's castle. I want my daughters to be raised in their homeland with their family, according to their birthright. At my end, I want to die a dragon rider's death, not that of some fat country lord.
Which would be fun to watch, but we don't get to see it because we have jumped ahead 10 years.
Yeah, and I thought that the last scene was really good, of the last episode, where I thought the king was dead. Had I not seen
the king's still alive, missing an arm, missing an arm, but still alive.
It's crazy. Like that. Not that I want to watch that kind of suffering. But in between these other stories that we should have seen, and I would have loved that, they could have thrown in how not well it's going for him and his relationship with his wife, who's very important. I would like to see how her and Rhaenyra got to this point in time.
Yeah, it's a great scene there in the middle of the show where we see the king completely annoyed. He's just like, I just want to get out of this room. He is done with being king. He just wants to go back to his room and eat and drink and just wait to die, basically. He doesn't want to have anything to do with anything else. And they're having their small council meeting, yet another small council meeting. Have your drinks, everybody out there. If you drink when you see a small council meeting. You see that openly, the queen and the princess, the title of the episode, are at each other's throats, openly, in front of everybody else.
Where, I wonder, is our Prince Damon? I suppose I should call him king, as he styled himself when he won a battle there. Once.
That was a decade ago, and he has since left the region undefended.
We have left it undefended. There should have been fortifications built. Watchtowers, a fleet of ships, a garrison of soldiers sent to hold our ground.
We cannot afford it.
I do, by the way, like how Alicent so cleverly, you see her becoming very bitter and mean-spirited in the way she uses the fact that Rhaenyra starts to leak milk during the meeting to like almost humiliate her into sitting down. It's really biting. That whole sequence is very rough.
I could have used another 2 episodes to at least really get the feel of those relationships. 2 episodes would have been good. It would have still been a little rushed, but
I have a feeling there's a lot of story to come in the back half. So that might be why they decided to split it here. But I do feel like this is just like too far. They just jumped too far ahead. There's like we just touched on just those 3 points. How did Sir Kristen Cole, what was the reaction after the fact? Like you said, seeing him a few years later where he's still kind of trying to slowly work his way into the graces of the court instead of now, having this prominent position within the kingdom, and seeing the romance between Rhaenyra and Harwin And of course, it's seeing what was up with Damon. Like, once again, we see that, and it's a really memorable scene, by the way. One of the most tragic deaths probably in the history of all of Game of Thrones, where his wife cannot give birth to this breached baby. And they're once again thinking, like, well, maybe we'll do cesarean, but we don't think she's going to survive. And she does not want to die like Emma died. She had specifically said to him that she wanted to have a dragon rider's death. And she goes, and it's like so tragic in a way to see the dragon like hesitantly not burning her, and the understanding that she wants him to burn her, and then she just says Dracarys, and he burns her alive, and while Damon watches. So it's a horrendous ending for poor Lena and her daughters now with Damon, who we know from her conversation and from theirs, he tries to educate them, he tries to be a dad, but this is not comfortable for him, right? Once again, something we haven't seen. We've just heard people talk about it. I would have preferred to see and not hear about it, right?
I mean, maybe it will redeem itself in the way that we think it needs to be redeemed. Because that all being said, it was still a fantastic episode.
Oh, that's the thing that I have to agree with. I think it's very well made. It's beautifully constructed. I mean, some of its images are really remarkable. The acting's exceptional across the board. I just feel like they skipped a few steps here. But yeah, nothing on the screen is bad. And as a matter of fact, based on that featurette, Sapochnik talking about how this is almost like a reboot to the season. This is almost like a new pilot for the show. This will be the show, as if those first 5 episodes were setting the stage for what's now going to happen, the battle between the princess and the queen, the battle amongst their children for who will be the next king. So this is what they're setting the stage, as if this is like now the beginning of what we're going to see for the next 2 years, 3 years of the show. That's all great. I just feel like we could have just had another 1 or 2 episodes of setup. I would have been totally fine with that. And as a matter of fact, would have been happier with that if that's what we got.
Yeah.
One more thing to talk about. Of course, we absolutely cannot skip this part, which is Larys. Larys is still floating around. I had said maybe he is Tyrion. He's not Tyrion. He's Littlefinger. And and here he is, talking to the queen, getting in her ear once again. Once again, we have not seen, but I assume this has been going on for the past 10 years based on this jump in time. And she says, boy, she just wishes her dad was back. And man, he's like the creepiest genie of all times, making this come true for her. And like, he's like, I know what I'll do. I'll get some crazy people out of the prison, cut off their tongues so they can't talk about anything, and then send them off to kill my brother and my dad.
That is so gross. I know. I saw that. I'm like, this is like a really mean-spirited kind of serial killer type guy who just has.
This is brutal.
Yeah, who's been excused. All his actions are excused, but he's like a psychopath, and that is not Tyrion. That was my exact thought, actually. I'm like, no, Tyrion was like honorable, and intelligent and thoughtful. This guy's just psycho.
Yes. I mean, he has a whole spiel where he talks about how love is weakness. And the best thing you could do is just to basically remove it from your life, and then you won't have any disappointments. So maybe he speaks to that as someone who probably was never really recognized by his strong brother, never was recognized by his father, probably never had like love interests and stuff because of him being lame and not being a good knight or whatever he could possibly be as a nobleman. So, I mean, all of that animosity is now festered into this, because this is, you think about how potentially the queen is indebted to him now, if anybody finds out what was done on her behalf, even though she really didn't want it to happen, obviously. But it's just like one more thing that, she has to worry about. But she does get, in the end, she's getting what she wants, right? Which is like, a weakened husband. He's going to need a hand. She's going to suggest Otto. And of course, she pretty much calls the shots at this point because Viserys is so weak. So I'm pretty sure Otto will be back. They'll basically be running the show. And smartly, very smartly, despite saying she was not going to do that, Rhaenyra decides, you know what? It is time for me to leave King's Landing before the knives are out for me, because they certainly are. She may have thought, like, in the last episode, how Otto warned Alicent that someday knives will be out for you. But Alicent now is completely in the driver's seat.
I was thinking, is the queen lucky to have these henchmen people around her, or is she unlucky? Because look who her advisors are, the people that she's listening to. There's like the mad dog who's jealous and frustrated and just not a nice person. I thought he was better than that. And now I'm like, oh, he's so bitter. And then she's got this psychopath But then who does Rhaenyra have? Her husband? And her husband's weak. It's like having no one.
I don't know if we've seen what kind of assistance he'll be to her. And I think, well, I was about to say, and Damon might be someone who'll align himself with her. He's always a wild card, right? So I think that he still could be potentially, if anything, another threat to her reign as well, right? So it all remains to be seen, I guess. And I guess that's
I feel
the
like he's a threat.
Yeah, I mean, especially now, he's going to be in a bad spot.
Yep.
He could be heading back to Driftmark with his daughters. Did I see the scenes for next week? I don't think so. So do we see? We do see her family arrive back at Dragonstone, but that was this episode. And we see Daemon with his daughters mourning the mom's death. I assume he'll probably be heading back to Driftmark with them.
You know what I find funny about all the offspring?
What's that?
They're so clearly one person's or another's. You know what I mean? There's no complication. Like all Rhaenyra's boys have exactly the same color, like this moppy, dark brown hair. And all of the queen's sons have this ice white hair. Because at first, when there are some crazy kids in this episode.
Yes, we forgot to talk about that.
I mean, wow. What brats. They are horrible.
Yes.
And who has the horrible kids? And who's got the kid that's being bullied? But then I realized that everyone's hair will exactly tell you who their parentage is. Do you know what I mean?
To confuse things, exactly.
So I'm like, oh, I know whose kids are whose. So it looks like a game board, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you're picking your characters for your teams.
Oh, and I think that's so intentional, right? Because I would not be surprised at all if over the course of this season and next, that these younger cast members become the focus of the show. And you need to be able to like basically have them in a room and know how they're aligned, right? And that just makes it much easier.
Oh, it's the hair. Even the daughters look exactly the same. And there's no need for that, but they look exactly the same.
All right. So I completely forgot. Of course, there's just so many things in this episode. I completely forgot to talk about the kids. And man, how could I have skipped that? Because that's really the point of this whole entire show. It's about children and parents, right? Including the ones that murder you at the end of the episode, burn you to death. But just in general, but across the board, right? That's like the theme of this show. And really interesting, all of these different aspects. So you have, like you mentioned, the dark-haired sons of Rhaenyra, which nonetheless, even though being only half Targaryen, they all have dragons. Meanwhile, the youngest son, the oldest son of Viserys, does have a dragon, but the youngest son, like his dad, maybe not to be a dragon rider. But he seems, I think I see bad things in the future for this kid. This kid is just cast as one of those creepy kids, and bad things are going to happen to this kid, or he's going to be a very bad king someday, perhaps. Meanwhile, let's not forget about the older, Viserys' older son, who decides to masturbate onto the commoners and is interrupted by his mother.
Who's not even surprised he's doing this. She's like
doing
annoyed at him. Yeah, she looks annoyed when she walks in. She's like, oh.
She's expecting it when she walks in the door.
Yeah, she seemed like just, why do I have to talk to this idiot that like clearly does not have enough brain cells? But I'm, birthed him, and now, so she is trying to tell him how things really are.
Right. He is the threat. And I think about his answer. He's just saying like, well, what if I don't want to be king? And she's like, you're the threat. The fact you exist is a threat, period. Which of course, echoing exactly what Otto said to her last week.
Yeah, these kids, huh?
Meanwhile, they're all bullying that younger brother, which makes me worry. Although he's going down to like the guts of the castle to confront the largest of the dragons. And I do wonder, when we've seen this in the past with Game of Thrones, for example, that might be that maybe he does have a dragon. Maybe it's just not, he hasn't found the right dragon yet. Rhaenyra says to her daughter that her egg may never hatch, but that she and Daemon both had to basically win over their dragon. So it wasn't their dragon. They are both the people who had to win over their dragon from somebody else, right? Maybe Aegon will have a dragon someday, just not the one that is birthed to him. And that all remains to be seen. But like I said, I get bad vibes for that kid. He just seems like trouble. What else do we have there? Oh, of course, we do have Daemon's two daughters who feel alienated from him. He's trying to, I really do feel like he is trying to connect with them. You see the scene where he's trying to educate them on proper Valyrian in the library. But, he openly says that, he struggles with it. But he's going to have to be single dad now. So that's pretty rough.
It was a beautiful scene. Oh, tell me.
It was. Yeah, it was a beautiful scene. And the last thing I was going to mention is I forgot to bring up one more thing is, of course, very importantly, I think, the scene between Alicent and her daughter. To my eyes, the daughter looks so much like a young Rhaenyra, so much like her. And I think that that's part of the coldness Alicent has towards her, is that she probably, maybe in her demeanor, maybe in her appearance, reminds her of that young Rhaenyra. And of course, now she despises Rhaenyra, so now she has to try not to despise her daughter as by proxy.
Yes, you are correct. You know what? I forgot about that scene.
Yeah. Rhaenyra, when she was younger, she was all about like, I want to fly, I want to do this. And she's asking all these questions about the different animals. Why do they, some fly, some don't? And like Alicent just has been like, she's trying to be polite to her, but being like, geez, I just want to get out of this room.
Yeah.
You may know what is the right thing to be done, but love stays the hand. Love is a downfall. Best to make your way through life unencumbered, if you ask me.
Her dad.
You've heard the stories of Harrenhal, Your Grace. It's built in hubris by Harren the Black as a monument to his own greatness. Blood mixed into the mortar. It is said to be a cursed place, that it passes judgment on all who pass beneath its gates.
You pass judgment.
The Queen makes a wish. What servant of the realm would not strive to fulfill it? I assume you will write to your father now?
Paris. I did not wish for this.
I feel certain you will reward me when the time is right.
Very interesting. Lots of stuff being set up here. I'm very intrigued for where the show goes. Simultaneously, as solid as this episode is, I agree. I think it's very well made from beginning to end, excellently directed, great performances. And I just feel like, did I miss 3 episodes of the show? Like, what happened in between, right?
Well, how many episodes are there in this show?
There's 10, so there's 4 more episodes. We just passed the halfway mark, so there's plenty more to come.
And when's the next season?
Oh, who knows? A year from now, I would assume.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, these shows usually like later on when the cast get famous and they have lots of other work responsibilities. Sometimes they have to take like 2 years off in between. But I think like early on, HBO gave them a green light for 2 seasons. And I'm pretty sure, like, especially based on the success of the show so far, they're probably going to go straight into production for season 2 as soon as season 1 wraps up. Probably they're probably going to right back into production, and then probably sometime next summer, I would assume, we'll see the second season.
I'm excited, and I love the Alicent actress.
Oh,
she
yeah.
was in Bates Motel.
Yes, she was also in a movie called
series
Thoroughbreds that it is available on HBO Max with her and Anya Taylor-Joy. It's kind of like a modern Heathers. And Sona and I reviewed that earlier this month on the podcast, and it's excellent. You guys should check that out for sure. Very good. She was also in a British spy show that I recommended earlier this year called Slow Horses, which is on Apple Plus, and also has been picked up for a second season. So she will be busy making that show as well. So yeah, that's the show. I do have a recommendation for you, I think that you would like.
What is it?
So George Miller, the guy who directed the Mad Max movies and made the most recent Mad Max Fury Road film, which of course won him all those Oscars and won all that praise for him, made a movie that almost nobody saw recently. And it was called 3,000 Years of Longing. And it stars Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. And it's about this professor who goes to the Middle East for a conference and basically finds a genie's bottle. And the genie comes to life. And it's Idris Elba as the genie. And they're inside of a hotel room and they're negotiating what her 3 wishes are going to be. And she basically is a professor of storytelling. I forget how they describe it, but she basically knows all the tropes of genie movies and stories. So she knows how they all go wrong when you wish for them. So she basically doesn't want to make her wishes, but he must make her wishes. Like it's basically his only function in life. So he tells her all these stories, flashback stories to all the previous people he's been with and the wishes that they've made. And they're basically in this hotel room together, but the flashbacks are beautifully, intricately designed, like really beautifully done.
Ooh, I love the thought of this.
Yes.
Where
and
can
I
I
think
see that?
it's available for rent right now on at home. It was in theaters, but ended recently. Anyway, the performances are great. The visuals are stunning. I would say that it reminds me of the movie The Fall, which I know you like a lot, with Lee Pace. Also reminds me of The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, with like these stories that are being told by somebody who's maybe an unreliable narrator. So beautifully designed, like those films. But I would say that I was surprised. I kind of thought I knew where the story was going to go, and it really moved me very deeply by the end of it. So I thought it was even better than those films. And I'm surprised nobody saw this movie. I don't think many people heard about it, even though it has a very prestigious pedigree. But I loved it, and I recommend people track it down. It's probably, it might be an acquired taste, but I loved it. I thought it was great. And for you specifically, I think you will love it.
I'm definitely going to watch it. You know what I've been watching that was pretty good? Modern Love on HBO, because it's all a bunch of little movies about love and longing, and none of them are connected.
Oh, like an anthology. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. And some of the anthologies are really moving, really, really like heartfelt. And some of them are really joyous. And everyone's famous. They're all like A-list actors as the main characters, or B-listers, whatever. You would recognize them. And one of the fun things I thought, I would never look ahead to what's coming up next. What could it be? I don't even look at the little box at the bottom. And I never knew who was going to be the cast. Like it was a play again. Yeah. So everyone is very recognizable. Mostly everyone. Mostly. It's very well acted. You don't have to watch anything beforehand, although this is a tiny bit of a spoiler. There is one episode that in what do they call that? A montage. So there is a montage that kind of ties everyone in the season together. Mm-hmm. But it's not long. It's pretty short. It's almost like an afterthought. So I like that it's not part of the last scene. Really, it is like an afterthought. It gives you a little bit of closure, and that's very nice and uplifting. I would watch this if I were you, because you never know what the next style is going to be, who's going to be performing in it, what are their characters, what is it about. I like it.
I love anthologies, even when some of the episodes are weak. I like them because, you got different flavors over and over again. And by the way, some of the things I like about 3,000 Years of Longing, because of course you have multiple stories inside one movie. So yeah, that's actually an interesting coupling up of recommendations. I do want to mention, though, for anybody who's hearing this, that it's on Amazon Prime, though, Celia. So, but yes, it looks like Modern Love on Amazon Prime. I will definitely check that out. And maybe you can recommend a few episodes for me offline, or maybe I'll just watch them in order and we can talk about it in the future.
You could watch them in order, because I feel like some of the ones that I thought were a bit of a weaker link, it's just because they're so specified that if it's not your thing, you will appreciate it but not feel deeply. But you could watch quite a few of these were my thing. So I felt very deeply in quite a few of these episodes, not all of them. Very personal, this show. If you watch it, you'll understand what I mean. There may be episodes that I thought were like, okay, pretty good, that you may feel really strongly about. Right. So I would just watch them all in order and start with season 1.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a try. Like I said, big fan of anthologies because I like just having different versions of playing on a motif. I will definitely check it out. All right. Thanks for the conversation. And we look forward to next week. And we will probably touch base later this week and do our little, it's like a little cute little Dahmer conversation. I mean, we'll talk about the Jeffrey Dahmer.
Dahmer. I'm so mixed emotions on that series.
Yes. So mixed. Yes. That's why I want to talk to you about it. Anyway, we can have that as a separate conversation because we're going to open up a whole can of worms, but I feel the same way. I cannot say it's undeniably watchable. I binged the whole thing pretty much within like 2 or 3 days. As I'm watching it, even within a single episode, I'm like, wow, that was really good. Wow, that was really terrible. It's like, it's uneven from moment to moment, but but hey, I watched all the way through, so they know what they're doing, and one way or the other.
But anyway, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.